How you doing, Bob? Another week for Citizens for a Better Broome podcast.
Nice to be with you
Hey, yeah.
on this snowy Tuesday. Here we are. We're recording this on the 8th. So glad to be with you, folks. Thanks for listening. As usual, Citizens for a Better Broome once a week on our podcast, which can be linked to from our Citizens for a Better Broome Facebook page. We encourage you to go there and like us so that we can post to your location, whatever it is we happen to post that we think is relevant to the citizens of Broome County. And also whatever written material that we happen to put out there will be at bobkingsley.com, my blog site. With that said, we're again very grateful that you folks are listening. Please reach out to us if you would like us to cover a topic we don't cover or have any suggestions about improvements. We've had a couple of those this week. A couple of folks who take umbrage with us on some of our positions, and we're happy to have them. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting last night. Andy, I'm sorry you missed it, but it was a great meeting at Thursdays at 6 is the first Monday of February.
Yeah,
it
looks like you had a good turnout.
Yeah, so it was really good. So anyway, I'll get to that later, but thanks again for listening, folks. And Andy, what do you have for us? We'll lead off with
that. I'm going to stumble on here a little bit as I was telling Bob earlier. I'm coming off of a COVID exposure. I'll put a plug in here. I know a lot of people, the vaxxers, non-vax, but I'm grateful that I did vax, and I had a lot easier time of it through the content to my family and others that we were all infected together. Those that not vaxxed, they've had a little rougher go of it. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. But moving forward here, interesting is the one-party rule, New York State, to the victors go the spoils. So Broome County now is chopped literally into 3 pieces for representation. And, so much for one-party rule here. It's going to be between the Senate and the Assembly. Even with Claudia Tenney now is going to come from her district, which is the Utica, more towards the western part of the state, from the town of Vestal moving west. And it'll be curious to see how this shakes out.
Well, like you said, Andy, the victor takes the spoils, and this is a classic case of this. I think this happens every 10 years in New York, where there's a redistricting, remapping, if you will, and the foes who in power basically control how this happens because they have the vote and the veto and so on. So these things take place, and they're notoriously drawn. If you look at the maps, you can see that they try to corral like-minded people so that they can control their positions in government in Albany. Unfortunately, it's done in such a way that, as you said, whoever's in control and in power does it. It's so far there hasn't seemed to be a better way to do that because everyone's got an axe to grind here. But anyway, it seems they're going after specifically Claudia Tenney in this case because they've taken her district and basically turned it into 3 districts.
Right.
Purposely, I think, trying to. So that's a good sign for her. It means that they consider her dangerous. And if the opposition considers you dangerous, that means you're powerful. So I'm sure she'll survive. She's got a nice war chest. And she's already said she's running. And I think if she stays on track, she'll do okay. Try not to make a repeat of what happened last time that got her basically, I think, unelected, was her reluctance to have town hall meetings and kind of avoiding people. So if she doesn't do that, I think she's pretty good as an incumbent.
Well, she's going to have her work cut out for her. Another, this bail reform keeps coming up, and the legislature and the Assembly keep saying that it's not bail reform from the increase in crime. New mayor of New York City either not conveniently meeting with the Assembly or the Senate because of this. He's getting his point across that he wants to see bail reform, because he obviously, I don't think he's come out and said this publicly, that the bail reform is the cause of the spike, but he's not referencing anything else. The spike in crime, the violence, is directly related to bail reform, as is when they say bail reform, there is no bail. Well, you commit a crime, you're arrested,
and you're kicked. Well, there is bail, but it's only for the felonies and, big time crimes. And the whole idea from this, Andy, originally was to not attach a high dollar amount to bail as a way to keep impoverished people from using the system. So I understand that to a certain extent. I mean, most people that are living, maybe on assisted supports or have had a hard time of it, can't pop $100,000 bond because they don't own a house and they can't do things. But this has gone too far, and everybody knows it. The good news is that crime statistics are very carefully kept. We can know with precision the amount of crime activity that's happening from individuals who are in the public domain that in the old system would have been in jail. We can see precisely who they are. And if they are the ones committing the crime, well, then obviously there's 100% correlation between who's committing the crime and the idea that they're out because there's no bail. So it'll take a while to do that. But once it is done and the criminologists have an opportunity to look at that data, that can be pretty powerful stuff. I mean, look, to me, you don't have to do it. I can tell you that that's what's happening because 10% of the criminals can commit about 80% of the crime. That's just a statistical fact as well. There's some crooks that are really good at it and they do most of the crooking.
That
put
needs,
them back out.
I know we talk about this almost each week, but we're beating a dead horse here, but it needs to get beat because this is what's driving out. What we find is that with the bail reform, we're losing population. People are moving out of the city and into the metro areas and into the rural areas. But the crime element really is everywhere.
Part of this, Andy, that people don't talk about too is along with bail reform, there's also was a big push to raise the age of people who are considered minors in a judicial hearing. And that was a huge mistake as well. I don't think most people outside of working in the criminal world or in the law enforcement world realize that the majority of people who commit these crimes are very young. I mean, you think of your 13 or 15-year-old in your middle class, beautiful neighborhood and good schools and all that. And you see, in your mind, what you think is an average 13, 15, 16-year-old, quite a different story in these other neighborhoods that don't enjoy that kind of a family bond that holds those things together. And as a result, these are little monsters, they're not children. They're very vicious. Combine that with a lack of maturity, it's a terrible combination. So there's a lot going on here, and it's not going to get any better until we get some legislation that reverses this.
Well, talking about maturity, our previous governor, Andrew Cuomo, is interested in reshaping his image, shall we say. He's interested in getting back into public life. How does that happen?
I heard that the other day, and then I heard his staff deny it. So I don't know really what to believe. I heard that he wanted to be, that he was thinking about running against James as the attorney general. He's already been the attorney general once in New York. That's a big step down from governor. I can't see an egotist like him going backwards. So I think that, I just think that's a false rumor. I think he wants to obviously cleanse his good name, quote unquote. But, I think he's a bit of a whore. I mean, I think he did probably what they said he did and more. And just doesn't like the way that feels on him. So he's trying to do damage control. It was reported in the Journal this week that he still got 16 mil.
Right, I read that.
In his campaign coffers.
Right.
And he spent $1 million already on this cleansing campaign. How in the hell does this happen? So you give some money to Mario the Magnificent, or I'm sorry, his son, the Magnificent, and you find out later that it was spent to help cleanse his scumbag name. I don't know how you get away with that. Shouldn't he be refunding this money to those donors?
Well, that's not going to happen. And as we know,
he, though, wouldn't it be the right thing to do if you?
Without question, it should be.
You resign in disgrace, and you've got 16 mil left. I think you disappointed the people who gave you that money. You ought to give it back. Come on, Andy, do the right thing.
Well, as we know, when they deny something, we know that it's true. So he's
Right.
His people have denied that he's interested in reshaping his looks and reshaping his past indiscretions. Well, we know that he is. It's a trial balloon. He's throwing stuff against the wall, and then he's trying to see if anything's going to stick.
Why doesn't he just get in well with one of the syndicate crime families in New York, and he could become probably pretty high up in the food chain right out of the gate, because they engage in the same kind of things. I mean, they, steal your money. That'd be taxation for the government and outright extortion by the mob. So he'd fit into that crowd pretty well. I think he could probably become a lieutenant pretty quickly. I think that's his next outlet. I think, Andy, is a crime family syndicate.
Well, I think he's waiting for somebody just to stumble. If Hochul stumbles along the way, or they find that she's, that there's some history, in her past, and even with the New York State DA, that Letitia James, if she trips over something, he's going to be right there. One of a few that are interested in getting involved again.
You know what? I haven't thought about this a great deal. I'm just happy he's gone. But if I had to guess now off the top of my head, I'll bet you he surfaces in some federal job. Remember, he was head of HUD.
Yeah, exactly.
He can stumble back into a federal job, or he'll end up in some liberal think tank where he's a contributor to the failing CNN and writing a column once a week, and maybe teaching a entry level how to be a shady lawyer at NYU course or something like that.
Well, it made news.
He'll surface.
That he was with Eric Adams, the new mayor. He had dinner with him, and he was proud. The mayor said that what better person to talk to get some knowledge. That's interesting, as well as meeting with de Blasio also. Well,
don't forget, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. I mean, he's probably I think that probably Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, is probably right about that. Great time to get buttonhole him and see, because he can spill his guts. He doesn't have to be restrained by any of his comments, because he won't be so much in the public eye. So I would think it'd be a great learning opportunity for Adams, who certainly needs it. He was the other day, his big thing was how he's a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat. And he's so proud of that. And he said he wants to lead other New Yorkers into a vegetarian diet. Yeah, that's the highest thing on the mayor of New York's plan of action as a new incumbent, just coming into office, that crime's out of control. Violence is out of control. New York's a shithole and nobody wants to go there anymore. And he's worried about whether you eat broccoli instead of steak.
Virtue signaling. I'll tell you wonder who they're talking to.
Anybody between Albany and New York City on that stretch of road where everybody travels in the same direction, and that's left.
Well, they're just too busy hearing themselves think.
Andy, I want to talk a little bit about our meeting last night, because it was we had a great turnout for a February. A lot of our members and interested people that come and chat with us and help us formulate policy go to Florida and things in the wintertime. So we generally have a slow period, but I think our podcasts and our Facebook presence has paid off. People are paying attention. We had some newcomers last night, Steve Flagg amongst them, who's a Broome County legislator from Colesville.
Yeah, I don't know.
Great guy, conservative, spoke at length with us about a number of things, shares a lot of our, I think, initiatives and desires. We're going to try to get him perhaps next week as an interview. So hopefully we can make that happen. I think we will. And folks, you'll enjoy Steve. He's a conservative and he's fighting the battle alone up there. So I think that'll be interesting. But thanks to everybody who came out last night. We had a really, really good meeting, and we're trying to spread the word. But the word was from the newcomers was that we just like-minded people, and they're refreshed. They're refreshed and renewed by the fact that they're finding out that there's others that think like they do. And I think that trend is strengthening throughout the community. So again, we welcome everyone, even the haters, the two guys that reached out and were very, very vocal about, how rotten I was in particular. I invited them both to come by, and of course they didn't. They hid behind their keyboards, probably in mommy's basement. But anyway, you're still welcome, you guys. One guy said he'd rather drink bleach, and I said, well, we could get a cup of it probably for you if you'd like some. So anyway, next month, March, you got another opportunity to do it, the first Monday in March, whenever that is. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but we look forward to it. And in the meanwhile, Andy and I'll keep grinding on here and try to give you whatever information we can give you about Greater Broome County.
Well, I think
So I
that'll,
think that should do it
yes.
for this go around, folks. Thanks for listening. Again, check us out on Facebook. BobKingsley.com will get you a lot of the written material. Andy, thank you. I know you're a little under the weather, so thanks for getting through this. And folks, we will see you next week. Hopefully we'll have Steve Flagg with us.
Great.
Until
Thank you.
then, have a great week. Bye-bye.